Welcome back, deep divers. Ready to become instant experts again?
Always. What are we diving into today?
Well, today's topic is a little different. We're tackling the four elements, but not like the modern take.
Right.
We're going way back, like
Mhm.
16th century old school, with a play called The Interlude of the Four Elements.
Now that's a deep cut.
Right. It's not your typical play either. It's more like a science lesson disguised as entertainment.
Yeah. Instead of focusing on drama or storytelling, this one aimed to, well, teach people about the natural world.
A play that's actually educational. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, first, you gotta understand how they saw the world back then. They believed it was divided into two regions. The ethereal region, all the stars, planets, and celestial spheres up in the heavens.
Right, makes sense.
And then there's the lower elemental region down here. That's where our four elements come in: earth, air, fire, and water.
So they thought what happened up in the heavens directly impacted things down here.
Exactly. They believed the stars and planets could influence things like weather patterns and even human personalities. Like, imagine planning your day around Jupiter's movements.
Wow, that's next level astrology.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did they explain how the elements themselves worked?
They gave each element its own unique set of qualities. Earth was heavy, cold, and dry. Water was heavy, cold, and moist.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. What about air and fire?
Air was light, hot, and moist, and fire was light, hot, and dry. They're opposites in some ways, but all essential.
Right, got it. So they believed that these elements were constantly interacting, combining, and separating.
Exactly. That's how they explained all the changes we see in the world, like the weather, the seasons, even the formation of rocks and minerals.
So they were basically describing like a simplified version of chemistry and physics.
In a way, yes. And they didn't just stop at the elements. They also had some pretty radical ideas about the Earth's shape and position in the universe.
Wait, what do you mean? Like they didn't believe the Earth was flat, did they?
Well, about that. They actually argued against the idea that the Earth had infinite depth or was resting on something solid.
Okay, that is wild. What did they think was holding it up then?
They thought it was just hanging there, suspended in the middle of the firmament. And they used this concept of impedance to explain how that worked.
Impedance. I'm not familiar with that.
It basically means resistance to motion. Their logic was that if the Earth were resting on something, or extended infinitely downward, it would create a lot of resistance, making it hard for celestial bodies to move smoothly.
So they thought the Earth had to be floating freely for the stars and planets to move so effortlessly across the sky.
Exactly. And get this line of thinking kind of foreshadows the concept of gravity, which wouldn't be formally described for centuries.
Wow, they were really ahead of their time.
Right.
But hold on, they also went to great lengths to prove that the Earth is round, right?
They did. They used several arguments to make their case. And remember, this is long before we had photos of Earth from space.
So what kind of evidence did they use?
Well, one argument was based on the fact that the sun rises and sets at different times depending on your location.
Oh, right. That makes sense. If the Earth were flat, sunrise would happen for everyone at the same time.
Exactly. They were like, hey, if the Earth were flat, wouldn't everyone see the sunrise at the same time? Checkmate. Flat earthers.
Clever. What other evidence did they use?
They also pointed to eclipses. They realized that eclipses aren't visible to everyone on Earth at the same time.
That's true. If the Earth were flat, wouldn't everyone experience an eclipse simultaneously?
Exactly. They were connecting the dots using simple observations to figure out some pretty complex truths about the Earth's shape.
It's amazing how much they were able to deduce just by paying attention to the world around them.
Absolutely. But their curiosity didn't stop there. This play also touches on something else that was brand new and exciting in their time: the discovery of new lands west of Europe, what we now know as the Americas.
Oh, right. The age of exploration. That must have been a mind-blowing concept for them, encountering a whole new continent filled with, well, who knew what.
Imagine. The play talks about the vastness of these new lands, the potential riches and knowledge they might hold.
It's like they were saying, hey, the world is bigger and more complex than we thought.
Exactly. But remember, this is a play, not just a science textbook. So they added some drama and even humor to spice things up. They introduced characters that embodied different approaches to life, like studious desire.
You look like a real go-getter. What about the other characters?
Well, then there's sensual appetite. He's, let's just say he's more interested in having a good time than in studying the elements.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's the classic battle between the pursuit of knowledge and the allure of pleasure.
You got it. And it's this clash that leads to one of the most interesting parts of the play, A sudden interruption.
An interruption. What do you mean?
Well, just when studious desire is getting into some really fascinating stuff about the elements, sensual appetite, with the help of our old friend ignorance, bursts onto the scene.
Oh, no. A cliffhanger. You can't leave us hanging like that. What happens next? Does studious desire get to finish his science lesson? Or do pleasure and ignorance win the day?
You'll have to wait and see. Join us for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into this clash of characters, that interruption, and what it all means for understanding the play's message. Welcome back, deep divers. Did you miss us?
You bet. That cliffhanger was killing me.
Bah.
Where were we?
We left off with studious desire getting interrupted mid-science lesson by sensual appetite.
Right. And we were talking about those new lands, the Americas, just before that. What did the play actually say about those discoveries?
Well, you got to remember, the play was written just a few decades after Columbus set sail, so the Americas were still this huge mystery.
Yeah.
I mean, Europeans were barely starting to grasp how big the world really was, so discovering these entire new continents...
Must have been mind-blowing.
Totally. It was like suddenly realizing your house was 10 times bigger than you thought. Their maps were probably full of blank spaces and like, here be dragons warnings.
Speaking of maps, do you think they had any idea how much these discoveries would change the world?
It's hard to say, but the play does capture this sense of awe and excitement about these new lands.
It does, yeah.
There's this mix of apprehension and optimism. Like there's, whoa, this is huge. Who knows what's out there? It really captures the spirit of the age of exploration.
Okay, so back to those characters. You left us hanging. What happened when sensual appetite barged in on studious desire's science lesson?
Picture this. Studious desire is explaining some complex concept, maybe how the Earth hangs in space.
The audience is probably mesmerized.
Yeah, totally. They're like, whoa, the Earth is floating, mind blown.
I can just imagine.
But then, bam, sensual appetite bursts in, all energy and jokes, and starts singing some catchy tune, totally derailing the conversation.
Oh, no. So, like, the opposite of studious desire?
Exactly. He's all about instant gratification, a good time, you know? And the play uses this to show how easily we get distracted, even when we're learning something important.
It's like when you're finally focused on that article you've been meaning to read, then a notification pops up.
And you're suddenly scrolling through social media for an hour.
Oh, yep. Guilty as charged.
But the play isn't just about being distracted. It's about this deeper conflict between our desire for knowledge and our love for pleasure.
A timeless struggle.
Totally. It's a choice we all face every day. Do we feed our curiosity and seek out knowledge, or do we just give in to the easy distractions?
That's deep. So you're saying this interruption isn't just some random event. It's like a deliberate choice by the playwright.
Exactly. By having sensual appetite and ignorance literally interrupt studious desire, the playwright is showing us how those forces actively work against knowledge and critical thinking.
It's like they're saying, hey, audience, pay attention. This isn't just about science. It's about the choices we make and how they shape our understanding of the world.
Right. It's a powerful message, especially back then. This was a time of huge change and discovery, but also a time when old ways of thinking were being challenged. So embracing new knowledge, that took real effort.
It makes me wonder how many scientific breakthroughs were delayed because someone decided it was time for a beer instead of more research.
Right. But the play reminds us that this tension between learning and pleasure has always been there. It's a human thing, you know?
Definitely. Okay, but I have to know, did studious desire ever get to finish his lesson? Who wins in the end? Knowledge or pleasure?
Well, there's a catch. Remember, we only have a fragment of this play, so...
Don't tell me it ends there.
I'm afraid so. It's like a movie that cuts off right before the climax.
Oh, that's torture.
Right. We're left wondering who triumphs, but that's also what makes it so intriguing, right?
I guess, yeah. It forces us to ask ourselves those questions. Do we choose curiosity, or do we get sucked into distractions? What kind of world do we want to build?
Exactly. The playwright leaves the ending open to our own interpretations, making us active participants in the story even centuries later.
It's like they're saying, hey, the ending's up to you now.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool way to engage the audience and makes the play's message even more powerful.
Totally agree. Okay, so we've talked about the science, the philosophy, the drama, but you mentioned humor too. What kind of jokes did they tell back then?
Well, sensual appetite is quite the character, full of witty banter and maybe even a few slapstick moments.
So they weren't all serious and stuffy back then.
Not at all. The playwright uses humor to keep the audience engaged. It's not just a dry lecture on the elements, it's about human nature with all its quirks.
It reminds us that learning should be fun, right? There's joy in discovering new things and expanding our horizons.
Exactly, and even though we only have a piece of this play, it's a starting point for our own exploration.
I like that. So what are the big takeaways? Aside from the fact that the Earth is round, of course.
Well, it shows us that knowledge is a journey, not just a destination. There's always more to learn, and even when we face setbacks or distractions, pursuing knowledge is worth it.
That's a good reminder, especially today when there's just so much information out there.
Right. We need to be careful what we let into our minds.
And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to make learning more fun too.
Absolutely. Who knows? Maybe somewhere out there, the missing pages of this play are waiting to be found.
Now that would be a discovery. It would be like finding a missing puzzle piece, a glimpse into a past that still has so much to teach us. All right, deep divers, back for the final part of our journey into this 16th century world. I feel like we've uncovered so much already about their views on the elements, the earth, even those new continents.
It's amazing how much they packed into this play. And remember how they set up the universe with the ethereal region up above influencing things down here?
Right. Like how they thought the planets and stars could affect weather patterns and even people's personalities.
It shows you how important that connection between the heavens and earth was to them, you know?
It's like they saw the universe as this giant interconnected web, everything influencing everything else.
Exactly. And while we might have more scientific explanations today, there's still something poetic about that idea, right? It speaks to that human desire to find meaning in the bigger picture.
Totally. But let's get back to those arguments for around Earth. They were really ahead of their time with that.
Oh, absolutely. And remember, they figured it all out without telescopes or anything. Like, take that example of the sun rising at different times depending on where you are.
Right. It seems so simple now, but it's actually pretty insightful.
They basically realized, hey, if the Earth were flat, wouldn't everyone see the sunrise at the exact same time? Boom, mic drop.
Case closed. They were like the original flat Earth debunkers. What other proof did they have?
Well, they also used eclipses.
Eclipses. How did those prove the Earth was round?
They noticed that eclipses aren't visible to everyone on Earth at the same time. If the Earth were flat, wouldn't everyone experience them simultaneously?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like they were saying, hey, if everyone isn't seeing the eclipse at the same time, then the Earth can't be flat. It's got to be curved.
Exactly. They were connecting the dots, using their observations of the world to figure out these bigger truths.
And then there's that whole North Star thing. You know how it appears higher in the sky as you travel north?
Oh, yeah. That one's clever. If the Earth were flat, the North Star's position would be the same no matter where you were, right?
Exactly. So by observing these things, they were able to deduce that the Earth must be a sphere.
Pretty impressive for the 16th century, right? It really highlights their ingenuity and willingness to challenge what they thought they knew.
It's inspiring. And speaking of challenging what we know, let's circle back to that central conflict in the play between knowledge and pleasure.
Yeah.
Studious desire versus sensual appetite.
Ah, yes, the eternal struggle. It's a battle we all face, even today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, we live in a world overflowing with information and distractions. It's easy to get sidetracked by all the instant gratification around us.
It is. This play reminds us that real learning takes effort, focus, and resisting those temptations.
It's like choosing to read a book instead of binge watching that new show everyone's talking about.
Exactly. Sometimes you got to push yourself to engage with things that make you think, that challenge your perspectives.
But let's be honest, even though sensual appetite might seem like the bad guy here, he represents something very human, doesn't he?
Oh, totally. We all have that part of us that wants to take the easy way out, to choose pleasure over effort.
It's that voice that says, just one more episode, or I'll start that book tomorrow.
We've all been there. But what's important is recognizing that pull and making a conscious choice about where we want to focus our energy.
Right. Knowledge might not always be the easy path, but it's definitely the more rewarding one in the long run.
Couldn't agree more. And even though we're left with only a fragment of this play, the message is still clear. The pursuit of knowledge is something worth fighting for, even when faced with distractions or setbacks.
It's like the playwright is saying, hey, the ending of this story is up to you. Do you give in to those distractions, or do you choose the path of knowledge?
Exactly. It's an invitation to choose curiosity over complacency, to be an active seeker of knowledge in a world that often tries to pull us in the opposite direction.
Well said. So, as we wrap up our deep dive, What's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will hold on to?
I think it's the power of curiosity, that spark of wanting to learn, to explore, to understand. That's what drives us to grow and evolve. And it's a spark that can burn bright even amidst the chaos of modern life.
Beautifully put. So, to all our deep divers out there, next time you're feeling that pull toward the easy path, the path of least resistance, remember studious desire. Embrace your curiosity. Keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep those questions coming.
Because the world is full of incredible mysteries just waiting to be uncovered. You never know. You might be the one to make the next big discovery.
That's it for our deep dive today, folks. Until next time, stay curious.